The Ziridian Armada emerged from hyperspace like predators breaking through water, their obsidian ships casting shadows across Earth's moon. Admiral Crix stood on the bridge of the flagship Inevitable Victory, his 6 eyes scanning the blue marble that humans called home. His species had conquered 93 worlds, and this primitive planet would be number 94. The tactical reports made him want to laugh if his species possessed such an inefficient expression. Of amusement, the preliminary scans had revealed everything they needed to know about humanity. These creatures dedicated entire industries to entertainment. They spent resources on preserving the weak and elderly. Most laughably, they made critical decisions based on chemical reactions in their brains that they called feelings. The Ziridians, who had long ago evolved beyond such primitive impulses, found it almost pitiful. Logic and cold calculation had made them the dominant force in 3 galactic sectors. Emotion was nothing but a vestigial weakness that evolution should have eliminated. Admiral Crix turned to his lieutenant, Voss, whose crystalline exoskeleton reflected the bridge lights in perfect geometric patterns. Had the humans responded to our demands for surrender? They have requested a diplomatic meeting, Admiral. They wish to discuss terms. Discussion. Crix's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his kind. They think words will save them. Very well. Let them exhaust their emotional appeals. It will make the conquest more entertaining. 3 hours later, a small human shuttle approached the Ziridian flagship. The Admiral had deliberately chosen the most intimidating conference room, with walls that displayed the conquered worlds of their empire in holographic glory. 93 planets, their populations either enslaved or eliminated, rotated slowly in the air like trophies. The humans would understand their fate before they even spoke a word. The airlock hissed open, and 3 humans entered. Admiral Crix was immediately struck by how physically unimpressive they were. No Nataraur more. No redundant organs visible. Through their skin, no apparent weapons integrated into their biology. Just soft, vulnerable creatures wrapped in fabric. The one in front, according to their files, was Ambassador Sarah Chen. She was smaller than the others, her dark hair streaked with grey, and she moved with a deliberate calmness that Crix interpreted as resignation. Admiral Crix, Sarah said, offering what their cultural database identified as a smile. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I'm Ambassador Chen, and these are my colleagues, Dr. James Okonkwo and Captain Maria Santos. Crix didn't bother with pleasantries. You have seen our empire's reach. You understand that resistance is illogical. Surrender now, and we will be efficient in our occupation. Refuse, and we will still take your world, but with unnecessary casualties. Sarah nodded slowly, as if considering his words carefully. Then she did something unexpected. She pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. It projected an image of a Ziridian child, one of their own species, playing with what appeared to be a toy spacecraft. Before we discuss surrender, Admiral, I'd like to share something with you. This image was taken on Zerid Prime, your homeworld, approximately 200 of your cycles ago. This child grew up to become a renowned explorer. His name was Vaxnine. Perhaps you knew him. Crix's 6 eyes narrowed. Vaxnine had been his clutch brother, killed in the conquest of the Altarian system 50 cycles ago. This is irrelevant to our discussion, is it? Sarah asked gently. You see, Admiral, we've been studying your species for quite some time. You claim to have evolved beyond emotion, but that's not entirely accurate, is it? You've simply suppressed it. buried it. So deep that you've forgotten it exists. But it's still there, waiting. Dr. Okonkwo leaned forward, his deep voice resonant with something Crix couldn't quite identify. Every species that achieves consciousness experiences emotion, Admiral. It's not a weakness to be overcome, but a fundamental aspect of sentient existence. You've convinced yourselves otherwise, but the evidence suggests differently. You dare to psychoanalyze us, Voss interjected, his crystalline form vibrating with what Crix recognized as agitation. Interesting. The humans were already having an effect. Captain Santos spoke for the first time, her voice carrying an odd mixture of steel and warmth. We're not psychoanalyzing. We're offering you a mirror. Your species didn't evolve beyond emotion, Admiral. You traumatized yourselves into suppressing it. Your history shows it clearly. The great suffering when your sun nearly went nova, the generation ships that failed, the losses you endured. You decided that feeling nothing was better than feeling pain. Crix stood abruptly, his full 9-foot height towering over the seated humans. Enough. You think these primitive psychological tactics will deter us? We have weapons that can crack your planet's crust. We have shields your projectiles cannot penetrate. We have conquered species far more advanced than you. Sarah stood as well, though she barely reached his thorax. She looked up at him with those strange, soft eyes that seemed to hold entire universes of something Crix couldn't name. Yes, Admiral, you have all of those things, but we have something you abandoned long ago. We have the ability to feel, truly feel, the weight of our actions. And more importantly, we have the ability to make others feel it too. Threats? Crix asked, though something in her tone made it seem like anything but. No, Admiral, a promise. If you attack Earth, we won't fight you with weapons alone. We'll remind you what you've forgotten. We'll show you what you've lost. And I promise you, the victory you achieve will taste like ashes in whatever you have instead of a heart. The humans left without another word, their shuttle departing as calmly as it had arrived. Crix stood in the conference room, staring at the holographic display of conquered worlds. For just a moment, he thought he saw faces in the swirling data, streams of the dead civilizations. But that was impossible. The dead were just statistics. They had to be. Admiral Voss said, his voice carrying an unusual tremor. Shall we commence the attack? Crix was about to give the order when he noticed something odd. His secondary heart, the one that regulated combat hormones, was beating irregularly. It was a sensation he hadn't experienced in decades. If he didn't know better, he might have called it unease. We attack at dawn, he said, finally. Let them prepare their emotional appeals. It will change nothing. But as he returned to his quarters that night, Crix found himself unable to enter his regeneration cycle. Instead, he stood at his viewport, watching Earth turn slowly in the darkness. The humans had left something behind, though he couldn't say what. A seed of something long buried, beginning to crack through the hard shell of logic he'd built around himself. On Earth, Sarah Chen stood in the Strategic Command Center, surrounded by the greatest minds in human psychology, neuroscience, and information warfare. They took the bait, she announced. Phase 1 is complete. They think we're going to fight them with appeals to mercy. General Morrison, a grizzled veteran of humanity's first contact wars, leaned over the tactical display. And what are we actually going to do, Ambassador? Sarah's smile was sad but determined. We're going to remind them what it costs to feel nothing. We're going to show them every face of every being they've eliminated. We're going to flood their communication channels with the last words of the dying, the songs of the conquered, the dreams of the destroyed. We're going to make them feel 93 worlds worth of grief. And if that doesn't work, Morrison asked. Then we move to phase 2, Dr. Okonkwo said quietly. We show them what they could have been. We show them joy, love, wonder, and hope. We show them everything they sacrificed for their empire. Emotional warfare, Captain Santos added. They think it's our weakness. They're about to learn it's our strongest weapon. Because you can't defend against something you don't understand, and they've forgotten how to understand feelings. As dawn approached on Earth, humanity prepared for a war unlike any other. Not a war of ships and weapons, though they had those too, but a war for the soul of a species that had forgotten it had won. The Zeridians thought they were attacking emotional primitives. They were about to discover that emotion, properly weaponized, could bring an empire to its knees. The reckoning, the attack began at what humans measured as 0600 hours. Earth Standard Time. Admiral Crix gave the order with the same dispassionate efficiency he'd exhibited in 93 previous conquests. The Zeridian fleet moved into attack formation, their weapons charging with enough energy to vaporize cities. This should have been the moment of inevitable victory. Instead, it became the beginning of their unraveling. The first wave wasn't weapons. Fire from Earth. It was a transmission, broadcast on every frequency the Zeridians used, overwhelming their communication systems with its intensity. It was the sound of a child crying. Not a human child, but a Zeridian youngling, recorded from one of their conquered worlds decades ago. The sound was primal, desperate, and absolutely impossible to ignore. Cut that transmission, Crix ordered, but his communications officer was frozen at his station, his 6 eyes wide with something that hadn't been seen on a Zeridian face in generations. Horror. I can't, Admiral. It's on all frequencies. It's inside our neural links. The crying continued, and then it was joined by another sound. Music, but not just any music. It was a Zeridian funeral dirge, one that hadn't been played since they'd abandoned their emotional customs. The melody was simple, haunting, and it reached into parts of their brains they'd thought were dormant. Lieutenant Voss stumbled, his crystalline form resonating with the frequency of the music. Admiral, the crew. Something's wrong with the crew. Crix looked around the bridge and saw his officers swaying slightly, their efficient movements becoming erratic. One of them, a young navigator named Turks, had liquid leaking from his primary. Eyes, tears. Zeridians hadn't produced tears in over a century. Focus, Crix roared. Commence bombardment immediately. But as the weapons officer moved to comply, the main view screen exploded with images. Faces, thousands, millions of faces. Every being the Zeridian Empire had killed in their conquests. The images came with names, ages, and their last words. A Altarian mother shielding her eggs. A Proximant elder reciting poetry as his world burned. A Kelevan child asking why the sky was falling. The weapons officer's hands froze over the controls. His name was Drex, and he'd been with Crix for 40 cycles. He'd never hesitated before. Now his whole body was trembling. I knew him, Drex whispered, staring at one face on the screen. That Kelevan. We were at the academy together before the conquest. He was, ... He was my friend. You don't have friends, Crix snarled. You have duty. Fire the weapons. But Drex couldn't move. None of them could. The humans had done something impossible. They'd found every personal connection, every suppressed memory, every forgotten relationship, and they were broadcasting them directly into Ziridian minds. Sarah Chen's voice cut through the chaos, calm and compassionate. "Admiral Crix, this is Ambassador Chen. I know you can hear me. I know you're feeling things you haven't felt in decades. That's not weakness, Admiral. That's you remembering who you were before you decided that feeling nothing was safer than feeling pain." Silence. Crix shouted, but his voice cracked. On the screen, an image appeared that made his primary heart stop. It was his clutch brother, Vaxinine, not as the child from earlier, but as he'd been just before his death. The image was accompanied by a message Vax had tried to send him, one that had been classified and deleted by Ziridian command. "Brother." Vax's voice echoed across the bridge. "I've seen something terrible. We're not bringing order to the galaxy. We're bringing death. I've started to remember what Mother used to sing to us before the great suffering. Do you remember? She used to say that feeling pain meant we were alive. I think we've been dead for a very long time." Crix's legs gave out. The Supreme Admiral of the Ziridian Empire fell to his knees on his own bridge, overcome by a grief so profound it felt like it would tear him apart. Around him, his crew was experiencing similar breakdowns. Some were crying, others were holding each other, and a few were simply staring at the screens in shocked recognition of what they'd become. But the humans weren't finished. The second phase began with a different kind of transmission. This time, it wasn't grief or loss, it was joy. Pure, unfiltered human joy. Children laughing, lovers reuniting, scientists discovering something new, artists creating beauty for its own sake, musicians playing not for conquest but for the simple pleasure of sound. And then, mixed with the human experiences, came Ziridian ones. Hidden recordings from before their emotional suppression. Ziridians celebrating their first spaceflight. Ziridian poets reciting verses about the beauty of their crystal forests. Ziridian parents singing to their young all the things they'd buried and forgotten in their quest to feel nothing. Dr. Okonkwo's voice joined Sarah's on the transmission. "You see, Admiral, emotion isn't your weakness. Its absence is. You've spent so long running from pain that you've forgotten that pain exists because joy exists. You can't have one without the other. And in trying to eliminate both, you've eliminated the very thing that makes existence worthwhile." The Ziridian fleet hung motionless in space. Weapons that could crack worlds remained unfired. Shields that could withstand supernovas flickered and failed as their operators forgot why they were supposed to be fighting. On every ship, Ziridians were experiencing a collective awakening, a remembering of everything they'd lost. Captain Santos delivered the final blow, though her voice was gentle. "We could destroy you now. Your fleet is helpless, your crew's incapacitated, but we won't, because, unlike you, we understand that victory without mercy is just another form of defeat. We're offering you something your empire never offered anyone." A choice. Crix managed to stand, his body shaking with emotions he couldn't name. He looked at his bridge crew, saw them struggling with the same awakening, and realized that they could never go back to what they were. The humans had destroyed them more completely than any weapon could have, but they'd done it by rebuilding something that had been broken long ago. What choice? He managed to ask. Sarah Chen appeared on the main screen, and Crix could see tears on her face too. "You can continue your conquest. You can fire your weapons and destroy Earth, but you'll do it knowing exactly what you're doing, feeling every death, carrying that weight forever. Or you can choose differently. You can choose to remember who you were before the great suffering. You can choose to feel again, even though it hurts. And if we choose to feel, asked his voice barely a whisper, then we help you, Sarah said simply. We help you process 93 worlds worth of grief. We help you make amends where possible. We help you become something more than conquerors. We help you become whole again. The bridge was silent, except for the sound of Zeridians crying, something that hadn't been heard in over a century. Crix looked at the blue planet below, then at his crew, and finally at his own reflection in the dark view screen. He saw not the admiral of a mighty empire, but a being who had been running from himself for so long he'd forgotten what he was running from. Stand down, he said quietly, then louder. All ships, stand down. Weapons to safe mode. Cancel the attack. Admiral. Voss asked, his voice thick with emotions he was still learning to recognize. We're done, Crix said, and for the first time in his life, he understood the weight of those words. The Empire, the conquests, the cold logic of it all. We're done. Contact the homeworld. Tell them. Tell them we've remembered how to cry. In the human command center, Sarah Chen slumped in her chair, exhausted from the emotional toll of the operation. General Morrison put a hand on her shoulder. You did it. You actually did it. You conquered an empire without firing a shot. We didn't conquer them, General, Sarah corrected gently. We freed them. There's a difference. What happens now? Morrison asked. Dr. Okonkwo pulled up stellar charts showing the 93 conquered worlds. Now comes the hard part. Now we help them heal, all of them. It's going to take generations. But it's possible, Captain Santos added. They're feeling again. That's the first step. 3 months later, Admiral Crix stood before the Galactic Council, not as a conqueror but as a witness. His testimony about the Zeridian Empire's crimes was delivered with tears streaming from all 6 eyes. It was the most powerful condemnation possible, coming from the one who had carried out those crimes. We forgot, he said to the assembled species. We forgot that strength isn't the absence of emotion, but the courage to feel despite the pain. The humans reminded us, not through force, but through forced empathy. They made us see ourselves clearly for the first time in centuries. The Council voted unanimously to accept the Zeridian Empire's surrender, and to begin the long process of restoration and reconciliation. It would take decades, possibly centuries, to undo the damage that had been done. But it would be done with feeling, with compassion, and with the understanding that emotion wasn't a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be embraced. Earth became known throughout the galaxy not as a military power, but as something far more dangerous, a species that had weaponized empathy itself. The warning spread to every corner of known space. Do not underestimate the humans. They will not destroy your ships or your worlds. They will do something far worse. They will make you feel the weight of what you've done. And in the end, that was humanity's greatest weapon. Not nuclear missiles or energy shields or faster-than-light travel. It was the simple, terrible, beautiful ability to make others feel what they had forgotten how to feel. It was the power to destroy empires, not through violence, but through vulnerability. The Zeridians had called humans too emotional. They were right. And that emotion had saved not just Earth, but the Zeridians themselves. In trying to conquer humanity, they had been conquered by their own humanity, buried but not destroyed. Waiting for someone to remind them it was there, as Sarah Chen wrote in her final report to Earth's government. We won not because we were stronger, smarter, or more advanced. We won because we never forgot that feeling pain is the price of feeling joy, that grief is the cost of love, and that a species that feels nothing has already lost everything worth fighting for. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere, on a ship heading back to Zerid Prime, Admiral Crix was learning to sing again, remembering the songs his mother had sung before the great suffering, and discovering that even after a century of silence, the melody remained.